thank you for watching the Meatsauce and Monty show. This week, no Paul. We got Dan, the common man, Cole. Now, I hope your feelings aren't hurt. I know you said on your program last week that you feel, you didn't say you feel slighted, but that
I don't feel slighted. It's just what does it say about my career?
That you're filling
that I'm actually filling in for something called Meatsauce.
Someone.
I mean, how the mighty have fallen. I used to be that guy that was that quirky, cute, kind of funny, wacky guy that everybody loved and wanted to hang out with and touch the hem of his garment. And now that's Meatsauce.
So he could
Meatsauce is now me, or my Meatsauce.
He's
no,
common.
I'm Meatsauce.
No, he's common 2.0. You could call him that if you want to.
No,
you don't want that either.
No, let's not do that.
So you're in trouble either way.
I'll just go with I'm off the bench, ready to go.
You're ready to go.
Put me in, coach. I'm ready to play.
It works out because we had you in here for week 4. We said we were going to do the quarterly report with Common Man.
I like it.
So it's week 8, so we get to talk about that too.
Sure.
And I see obviously you're wearing your Honolulu blue, and that was not you said, oh, you're wearing a hat. You can't.
I forgot it. I did. No, I did.
Really?
Well, it's one of my 4 or 5 hats I wear, but I had no idea it was on until I walked into the place. Until Leo Lewis pointed it out to me.
Yeah.
Leo Lewis in the house.
Going to be our guest. Absolutely.
Yep.
We're going to spend a good 10, maybe 12, 13.
Couple 13, 14
there you
minutes.
go.
Sure, yeah.
We might. We'll see how it goes. We'll see how this first segment goes. And yes, we're self-aware. We're on the CW, 10 o'clock Sunday mornings. The Vikings are in London. We are expecting to be maybe the halftime show, or we could say the post-game show. It might already be over.
Well, I think most people expect. I mean, this is one of those, I don't want to call the game loser-proof because on any given Sunday, you know, the Browns are not very good, especially offensively. They're very, I think pathetic might be actually a compliment for them. And with the Vikings defense as good as it is, as good as it has been, I don't even know if the Browns will cross the 50-yard line. So yeah, people may have been tuned out of the game already, that's for sure.
We will do our picks very last thing in the show. We'll talk about the Vikings, we'll do our quarterly report.
Sure.
We'll have Leo Lewis join us up here on stage. And then we'll do another segment, Honest Opinion, if you remember that. I throw some topics your way, maybe a little bit of other Minnesota sports. And you can be brutal, you can say whatever you want.
My problem is I lie for a living, but I'm honest about it.
There you go.
know I'm making it up as I go along. That's what I do.
All right, let's start. We'll talk Vikings.
Okay.
Even though normally we're pre-game, this is during game, but we're going to talk as if we know what we're talking about.
All right.
So let's start off here. In London, do you put any stock in the going overseas?
No, none. It's as overrated as anything I've ever heard. This body clock and jet lag and this and that and the other thing. You go there, there's the only adjustment you have to do is adjust your clock, your watch, your wristwatch. Other than that, there's nothing to it. I don't care what the medical people say or the scientific people say. I went to Scotland many years ago, back in 1997. I got on a plane in Minneapolis at 5 o'clock. We flew to Toronto. We had a layover there. From Toronto, we went over to Scotland. We landed in Glasgow. We got in the rental car, drove all the way across the country over to St. Andrews. We checked into the St. Andrews Hotel. I grabbed my clubs. I ran over to the golf course and I shot a 79, including a birdie on the first hole. I played as good as I could play, so there was no jet lag.
Yeah.
There was no circadian rhythm. There was none of that. I don't believe it. The team that plays the best is the team that will win.
And they both have to travel. It's not like one of those advantages where one team is already there. However, the NFL, there's been flirtation with they might someday want to try to put a team over there. What do you think about that? Trying to expand overseas.
Yeah, well, I mean, they can do that, and I'm sure they'd find somebody that would be more than happy to pay the $1 billion franchise fee, I guess. For me, it would be, how many free agents do you think you're going to lure that are going to want to play all of their home games in London and have to make that travel? Forget about the circadian rhythm and the jet lag and all that, but just having to travel such a long distance, I don't think you're going to attract a lot of free agents. I really don't.
Be a lot of time. Yeah. And trying to grow the sport in a place where soccer is number one.
Yeah, I think I don't know how it's being received there. I think the Londoners don't mind it, but I don't think they have a love of the game like they do soccer. But maybe someday they will. Maybe I'm underrating that. I don't know.
So you said before, Cleveland, obviously, they're very bad.
Yeah.
I will point out, you said pathetic might be a compliment. I'll point out the one thing they have going for them, and that's their defense. Their defense is allowing an average of 83 rushing yards per game. That ranks 6th in the NFL. So the only threat that might be is to Latavius and to Jet. Yeah. Other than that, Cleveland is pretty poor.
Well, right. I'd have to see some other numbers, though, is the teams that they've played to this point to post that number. Do any of those teams have much of a rushing threat? Now, One or two might. So, it might be a legitimate number, but, oftentimes if you're playing teams that don't have much of a running game either, your run defense might look a little better than it is. But yeah, that would be their strength if you're going by the numbers.
Very good point.
Yeah.
The other number you've probably heard this week, that they've lost 4 games by 3 points or less.
Yeah.
I do have that. And so when you talk about their competition, Tennessee in overtime, Tennessee is, they're doing okay. They're actually tied for the lead in the AFC South. But then you've got the New York Jets, another terrible team. Pittsburgh, which surprises me.
They're hot and cold.
They lost to Chicago, but they look good against us. And then Indianapolis, again, one of the worst teams in the league. So 2 out of the 4, pretty terrible.
Yeah, and that's the other point. It's who you play, and a lot of it's when you play them too.
Are they hot or are they not?
Well, yeah, I mean, because you'll hear that a lot of times from fans of teams or teams themselves. They'll go, you know what? We had 4 games we lost by a grand total of 12 points. We could easily be 8-0. Well, but how about the games you won by a grand total of 12 points or less? You could have lost those as well. People only want to use the statistics when it benefits them.
It's the Richard Pitino. We're 3 minutes away, Fleck.
Yes.
He said we're 3 minutes away from,
That's it. And so it's like you may have lost 4 games by a grand total of 13, 14 points. But if you won 4 games by a grand total of 13, 14 points, those games could have been reversed as well. You are what you are. If you're 4-4, you're a 4-4 club. If you're 1-7, you're 1-7. And in the case of the Browns, 0-7 and probably about to be 0-8.
Do you feel the threat? Obviously, you're wearing the Honolulu blue. This 0-7. This is bothering you. I can tell this is not a bit. This is a legitimate chance.
Can you see the sweat in my hands?
Sweaty
palms.
This is a team that has a legitimate chance of running the table and going 0-16 and tying your
Motor City
only
Kitties.
thing you guys own.
The only 0-16 team in the history of the National Football League is the 2008 Motor City Kitties. Last year, Cleveland was playing at home to San Diego in Week 16. Week 17 was at Pittsburgh. So my boy and I, Deuce, he's a converted Lions fan. We knew the only chance for the Browns to lose
16
was going to be Week 16. San Diego rushes a close game. We're watching. The only people in the Twin Cities watching San Diego and Cleveland. They rush out into the field. They have no timeouts left. The Chargers set up for a last-second field goal. They miss it wide right. Cleveland wins. We're ecstatic.
There you go.
And I thought, you know what? They can't be that bad next
year,
so they'll probably win
better.
a game or 2.
Yeah.
But now they look like they might be worse this year, so I'm very concerned. And San Francisco, that's another team that hasn't won a game yet, and I get it. I think they got blown out their last game. Prior to that, they were that same team that of their 6 losses, they've lost by a grand total.
Right.
Well, but they still lost. So, I don't know.
If I had to put money on the table, though, San Francisco is going to get a win or 2. Cleveland may not.
So, well, here's what's sad. This is what's sad. Cleveland and Detroit play. I'll be rooting for Cleveland. I'll be rooting for the Browns.
Because you want to see the record and not just this year. Playoffs.
It's the only thing we have as Lions fan. There's no other record, and we're not going to the Super Bowl.
You're not going to the Super Bowl?
No, these fans out here only one team is going to win the whole thing. And
that's right. Everybody else is disappointed.
And 20 fans of 20 or 25 teams in the league think their team's going, and they're not. I'm sorry to tell you they're not going.
At least you're honest with yourself.
Oh, I know.
You say Detroit. Let's get to the quarterly report. Though.
Okay.
Now you're talking. You already said your team's
quarterly report. We should have a little sounder.
That's what Scott does. He does he does little animations. Oh. Maybe he'll freeze your picture. He'll take your head. He'll put it on something like the Lions symbol. Who knows? So quarterly report. Week 8. Your team. You're already saying they're not going to win the Super Bowl. NFC North. Not really wide open. The Vikings seem to have a lead on it. We assume that they're going to win today. They should be 6-2 going into their bye week. But let's just say for right now they're a game up.
Right.
They got the head-to-head against Green Bay. Obviously, you have the head-to-head against the Vikings, but you're 2 games back. Is Chicago pretty much dead in the water?
I don't know. Maybe they could be legitimate. I mean, they sprung an upset last week. Now, I get it was 2 defensive touchdowns. As a matter of fact, it was the same kid that scored them both, and he set an NFL record, I think, for the only player in NFL history to have 2 defensive scores of 75 yards or more, something of that nature.
And on offense, did they have something like less than 10 pass attempts the entire game?
He threw 7 passes, Trubisky. Matter of fact, we looked it up. I thought it might have been the fewest passes since 1923, but apparently not. 2 other quarterbacks, 1 through 4. Tebow threw 2 for Denver. Somebody for the Carolina Panthers threw, I think it was the Panthers, threw 7. All 3. In all 3 cases, the head coach was John Fox. He was the head coach of each one of those teams. So, you would figure the Bears aren't going to be able to be a factor, but you don't know. Green Bay without Rodgers, they look like they're dead in the water, unless Hundley can somehow, learn on the fly very quickly and put some. But their offensive line's a mess. The Kitties, they play tonight against Pittsburgh. They've had the bye. They played the last game on Sunday, the night game. Stafford's been banged up. He's got a hamstring injury. He's had bad ribs.
Golden Tate
he had the ankle. Tate may play.
He might be back.
He might be playing. I mean, the Lions are at home. I mean, there's really, I don't know if you want to call it a must-win, but I think they need a win over Pittsburgh tonight to keep pace and feel good about themselves. They've lost 3 in a row now, I think, and so they need a win.
So would you say that the Vikings, if you had to say, what are the odds that they're going to take the NFC North?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think
you would say that they are definitely
clearly
in
the favorite unless if they get a major injury, and theirs would have to be, I think, more on the defensive side of the ball. If they were to lose Ev, or if they were to lose Anthony Barr, or they were to lose Harry the Hitman, or Rhodes, or a couple of those guys, well, then all of a sudden your strength might not be, I'm not saying it becomes a weakness, but now all of a sudden
you're back to the norm.
Yeah, you're back to norm. So I think so much, we all know the NFL is so much of it's predicated on injuries. The Vikings are probably healthier than any team in the North. I don't know about Chicago, but Detroit's had a rash of injuries. So is Green Bay. Minnesota stayed relatively healthy. They got guys coming back. I think they're the front runner. I really do. The schedule, it looks a little tougher because they got a lot of road games. I think 6 of their last 9 games are on the road. But I still do like their chances as long as they stay healthy.
All right, we are going to make our picks of the Cleveland Vikings game at the very end. Obviously, we're leaning very hard purple.
I don't know. I might take Cleveland.
Sunday mornings, if you want to make your picks, come here to Mystic Lake, and you can win free slot play cash. You come here, you can win up to $1,000 just for entering, and it's progressive. You go through the entire season. If you come here on Sunday mornings, you win the most games, $5,000 free slot play. And by the way,
5 Gs.
5 Gs is pretty good.
That's a nice chunk of
and
change.
if you come here and it's a home game, complimentary bus rides to the bank, or as you say, the goose that laid
the golden egg 2.0.
You've been inside the bank. You like it?
I like the bank a lot.
Would you like a free bus ride on a Sunday morning?
I would like a free bus ride.
I would do it too.
You know what I like about the bank the very best? I do like the idea with all the glass, because it does feel like you're outdoors. You don't feel claustrophobic. You know, in the old Metrodome, I think it was spacious, but still you got that roof over and you always feel. When you're inside the bank, those that have been there can understand. If you just watch it on TV, you can see it feels like you're outdoors even when you're inside.
The ceiling is up so high you almost lose your balance. You're looking up and walking. It's crazy.
It is. It's a. I'm not going to say it's as great as the architectural accomplishment is the Great Pyramids of Egypt, but it's still pretty cool. It is.
How do we follow that up? Well, we follow that up by bringing former Viking wide receiver and punt returner Leo Lewis onto the stage. So welcome to the stage, Mr. Lewis. Thank you so much for being here with us.
It's my pleasure.
11 years in the NFL, 13 years professional football.
Yeah.
And one of the first questions that I always ask Vikings that played of this era, what was it like to play for Bud Grant? And I understand your answer might be a little different because
of course
your dad also played for Bud in the CFL.
That's right.
That is amazing.
Well, not only that, they were teammates in the Canadian Football League.
That is so crazy.
Back in the day when you can earn as much money in Canada as you could in the NFL. And certainly both my dad and Bud chose to earn more money, although it was about $1,000 more, but it was still more money in the 50s when they played. So yeah, it was interesting. And, certainly Bud had a knack of hiring or signing kids of friends of his, as well as his own kids. I mean, he had some of his own kids that ended up playing for Les Steckel and Jerry and Bernsey. During the day, but he's certainly a stoic guy, never talked much to his players, but certainly demanded a lot of us.
So you think it was to your advantage that the family relation, your dad up in Canada, and then knowing you, do you think that helps, that he liked to keep people tight?
Of course it did, because I was coming from a season in Canada at the time, and I was a free agent, I was looking for a place to go, and Dad decided that he'd call up Bud and just give me a chance. Well, I found out that I came after spring training, and they gave me the number 46. So as a wide receiver, that was a telltale sign that maybe my days in the NFL were not going to be long. So
didn't you end up being number 87?
I ended up being number 87 in that initial training camp.
What's the story where you went from 46 and then they said, okay.
Well, I had a pretty good training camp.
There you go.
So I ousted the person who originally had number 87.
Who was that? Do you remember?
It was Robert. It was Dew Miller. I can't remember his first name. It wasn't Robert Miller, because Robert Miller was a running back. But it was certainly a guy that was my stature, did the same things that I did, returned punts, was a backup wide receiver, and I had a good training camp. But at that particular time, they had a number 2 draft choice who was named Marty McDowell. And although he had a decent training camp, they had to keep him because he was the first draft choice, even though they didn't have a number 1 draft choice at the time.
Were you always a wide receiver?
I was.
Football?
I was. And,
Okay.
you know, the thing about it is that I didn't return punts until I was 30 years old. And people don't
Really?
understand that I played wide receiver most of my career for the Vikings.
When they say, hey, we want you to return punts, you go, now wait a minute now, because to me that's got to be one of the most dangerous positions because you're there staring at a football.
Standing on
You've
an
got
island.
11. Well, the punter's not running down.
Well,
the
you
field,
know
but
what?
everybody else is coming down
Yeah.
the field to hit you, and you go, boy, I really like to fair catch this, but I've got to return the ball eventually.
I did it as much as I could, but at the same time, you know, I had a lot of faith. But, you know, I had returned punts in high school and in college, so it was one of the reasons why I came to the Vikings. But I did so well at the receiver position, and, you know, other people could do it. You had Rufus Best, you had Eddie Payton, if you can remember him.
Oh, sure.
So we had guys who did that for a living as well.
Well, was your dad was a heck of a football player.
Yeah.
He's in a couple of Hall of Fames.
Of course.
Was he wide receiver too? Or
No,
where did
he was
play?
a running back.
He played running back.
Yeah, my dad played at Lincoln University in Jefferson City, Missouri, a historically black college. And I do want to say right now that he had just been selected for the Black College Football Hall of Fame
Sweet.
this
That's
month.
awesome.
And that's his 3rd Hall of Fame. He's in the College Football Hall of Fame and he's in the Canadian Football Hall of Fame. But one of the sweetest things about it is that he did get drafted in the NFL, but decided to go to Canada for $1,000 more than he was going to make
so
in the
funny.
NFL.
Little extra money, you know.
Of
go up
course.
there. So obviously you had a very great, long career with the Vikings. A very stable time when you look back on the Bud, Tommy Kramer,
Right.
Wade Wilson. But you were also on the team when things kind of shook up with the Herschel Walker deal.
Yes. Well, I tell you what,
What
the
did
first
that mean to you?
shake-up was Les Steckel's year.
Yeah, but that was just one year.
But that was
I
just
didn't.
one
I didn't
year.
want to bring that up.
But the Herschel
But-
Walker deal, you know, we had been a playoff team the year before. We were in the NFC Championship, so we knew we were a good team. We just needed a little bit of here and a little addition here. And
Because that's how
I
the
think-
fans felt. I know as a fan, we thought a running back was
Yeah.
all the team needed.
Of course.
That's
Darren
what we
Nelson
thought.
was- Well-
Did the team feel the same way? Did the
Well,
guy, when you
yeah.
guys acquired Walker in the locker room, did you guys go, boy, I think this is the last piece, or were
is
you
it.
still unsure?
Well, I think it was in our minds the last piece because he wasn't a Darren Nelson. You know, Herschel Walker was a big running back
Right.
who was as fast as Darren, but Darren was like me. We were the scat back type of role where we could return kicks. We can come out of the backfield and catch the ball.
More versatile, maybe.
and more versatile, and you know, more of a. Darren was getting more to be a 3rd down type of back at
Sure.
the time, and not necessarily a 1st and 2nd down running back.
Yeah.
So we needed Herschel Walker, and at the time we had Alfred Anderson had left, who was the 1st round draft choice in 1984.
Okay.
He had left, and so we needed a guy like him. And Herschel just happened to be the person that we thought we had.
And it didn't turn out the way you expected. Looking back on it, I mean,
well, you didn't have to
you
give
see-
up very much for him either.
Oh,
It
my
wasn't
God.
that-
The Dallas
Come
Cowboys
on.
franchise.
On paper, it looked sweet, didn't it?
It
Looking
did.
Of
back on
course.
it though, is it laughable or does that still? Is there like a little sour feeling? You're like, it just didn't work out.
I tell you what, Herschel's a nice guy, great player. It just didn't fit the way we thought it would fit, and certainly we haven't been the same because, except for Adrian Peterson, there hasn't been that profound running back.
Robert Smith, possibly.
Robert Smith was somewhat.
He had a good run.
He had a good run. You know, certainly he ran out of bounds a lot, but he was certainly
Yes,
fast. Robert was faster than you thought he was. He was a real fast scat back. But you're right. I think someone like Adrian Peterson and a Herschel Walker, someone who is muscular and fast at the same time. We haven't had too many of those guys.
The rules seem to have changed for wide receivers and what the secondary can
Yeah.
do. I bet you'd like to play right about now, right? Because aren't
know
they a little
what?
bit
Where they
more
couldn't put their
advantageous
hands
now
on you.
for the wide?
Yeah.
Is it more advantageous for the wide receiver now than it was when you were playing?
You would think that a 5'8" wide receiver is not visible on a team nowadays, but they are. I mean, we've got a lot of short wide receivers, but we have a lot of tall wide receivers too. The Randy Moss types are profound in a lot of the teams. But I just think that every time I see a wide receiver miss a simple ball, I'm just saying, Bud and Bernsey would never let that guy back on the field. And the thing about it, these guys are making so much more money. It's kind of hard not to play him nowadays, you know.
Sure.
But I think the wide receiver position is unbelievably the place to be on a team because they throw the ball so much. You know, I led the team 1 year as a wide receiver, and I caught less than 50 balls. You know, and nowadays that's kind of like looking at a team who can't win the game.
Well, and getting back to the rules too, they make it a little easier for the wide receiver because they want offense. They want to have it. So
of course.
Line of scrimmage, they can only bump certain time, and they seem to call pass interference a little bit more.
Course.
So I think it probably makes being a wide receiver a little easier now than it was back when you were playing.
Well, you know what? The defensive backs are just so good nowadays.
Yeah.
So I mean, your safeties are much bigger. Your corners are tall and lanky. It's hard to get off the ball a lot. And, you know, yes, being a bigger receiver, you think they'd have an advantage, but sometimes that's more space for a defensive back to get his hands on as well. So that's why the scat back receiver is still in vogue.
Yeah.
And everybody has one.
Protecting a defenseless receiver, that rule wasn't around when you were playing.
Oh, man.
I think D-backs and safeties are probably waiting for those hits where you'd come across the middle and weren't looking and trying to
I mean, I think the nature of the game has not changed. That's what I love about the NFL. You have that small field. It's getting to be much smaller now with the big linemen and the quick defensive backs. There's not a lot of space out there to really catch a ball or to run. And I think it's such a great game. And it's very difficult to stay at the top year in and year out. And maybe that's okay because I think to have an 11 to 13 year career nowadays is unbelievable.
Yeah. Well, and a shorter career, more money, like you said. Don't have to go to Canada anymore for that extra $1,000.
That's for sure.
Stay right here. I want to quick talk to you about your life after football.
Okay.
You've stayed here in Minnesota. You worked with the Vikings. You went to the U of M, but right now you're at North Minneapolis.
Yeah.
You're the athletic director up there. What is it like to go from being, you know, like you said, the scat back, the slot guy, the tiny guy, the guy saying, I'll do punt returns, and now you are leading youth. You're being inspirational to a school and with their athletic
I think youth work has always been in my nature. I'm an educator by heart. You know, I think when I started liking football, particularly at the pro level, I was getting paid. I always envisioned myself teaching classes at a college level classroom, but also coaching at a high school. And I got kind of the mix of both. You know, I do still teach, and I now I'm the athletic director at a high school, which is even better, I believe.
Yeah.
But I think every year with the Vikings, I'm on the bubble. I'm just thinking, man, I got to think of something else to do just in case.
What's my next thing?
It was unbelievable, man. Making the team was very difficult for me.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't the draft choice. Certainly wasn't the top draft choice. So I had to find an alternative career that was going to be, you know, reasonably sound for me. My accountant told me, though,
your accountant,
that if I'm going to find another career, I better think a little bit higher than just being a teacher at a high school. You know? So I decided to go back to school and do a research approach to a degree and got a PhD in kinesiology.
Wow.
And I wanted to study the plight of NFL players. So my dissertation was on active NFL players at that particular time. And you know what? It's been almost 25 years since I studied those players. And I've talked to my kinesiology department, and we're going to try to find those players 25 years later and see what they're doing.
Very interesting.
They're very much so. So I'm really anxious about that. At the same time, I can still talk to you reasonably well. The concussions haven't surfaced yet. I can stand here with relatively strong knees. And I really feel blessed that I'm still able to, talk about these things.
And that's the hard part about any sport, particularly the National Football League, is the wear and tear and the toll it takes on players because of. Did you get many concussions that you're aware of when you played?
Well, I'm not aware. I can't believe
none that you remember
that ever happened. But you know what? I think that I'm seeing that the position of wide receiver isn't as at risk as it would be for a defensive lineman or a defensive linebacker or some of your positions where you're in collisions every play.
Right.
You know, so I mean, very rarely am I getting hit, is what I'm saying. But I tell you what, when you hit the Metrodome carpet,
Yeah.
Cement.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter
Right.
if you're not getting hit by an
It's like,
individual.
it's like Highway 494.
Yeah, I've hit my head on the ground quite often, and those are some of the things that I think we'll figure out later, I guess, as to how effective they were and how much of an impact it is on the brain.
Sure.
But I tell you what, it is football. It's not going to be something that we can get away from.
Yeah, well, they keep, you hear about all the studies they're doing, and they're trying to make the helmets different, the equipment different, but still at the end of the day, unless they start playing flag football,
course.
there's always
That's
going to be
right.
contact.
That's right.
It just is.
And we don't want to do that.
It is what it is.
I don't think
And
so.
you say the National Flag Football League with 35-year-old men playing it? What do you think?
Yeah.
No.
Well, then you would have guys tying the flag to their belt loop and such like that, and then you'd have to get penalized for that.
I know.
Untucking the jersey, all the little tricks.
Of
Mr.
course.
Lewis, thank you so
All
much
right,
for
it's been
joining
my
us.
pleasure.
We appreciate it.
Thank
Thank
you
you to
for
Mr.
having
Blake.
us.
Thank you to the Vikings alumni.
Take care, man.
Again, a special thanks to the Vikings and Leo Lewis for coming in here. But we got to pay the bills. Thunder from Down Under. Common, you're a big fan, aren't you?
Yes, and Penn and Teller and Jeff Foxworthy,
There you go.
too. They're all
November.
good.
You're a big fan of all of them. November 4th, 7:30 and 10:30 here at the Mystic Showroom. Thunder from Down Under.
There's no better showroom in town. I've been there
Mystic
many,
Lake.
many times.
Have you worked there? Have you got to do your stand-up? You want to.
I'm not big enough for that,
You
boy.
want a
I'm a
packet.
D-lister.
Penn and Teller, November 10th at 8 p.m. there in the showroom. Jeff Foxworthy, you're a redneck if, November 17th, 8 p.m. Mystic Showroom. All right, we got about a minute left. Honest opinion, we're going to just bullet right through these.
Okay.
Wolves, your opinion?
I'm worried.
Yeah, should be.
Yeah, defensively, I thought they'd be better. I know they missed Butler for a couple games, but he
Teague
can't
and
mean that
Rubio,
much to him. I'm not sure.
All right, Wild, 2-3-2, bottom of the Central Division at the time of this taping. Worried?
I just think I don't think they're going to be much different than what we've seen the past few years. There's nothing they've done that makes me think, boy, this is the year they're going to take that next step. I think it's the same team we
Still
saw last
playoff
year.
bound?
Yeah, maybe, but I don't. But if they do, I don't expect them to go deep. I
Sure.
just don't.
All right. So that's it for Honest Opinion. We bulleted through that so fast. Let's make our picks. On the season, I'm 5-2. Paul is 2-5. When you were here last, you picked for them. You got it wrong. You picked against your Kitties, and you picked the Vikings. I picked the Vikings. We were both wrong. That's one of the ones I got wrong.
Okay.
So, Vikings, Browns, 9.5-point favorites. Let's put the points in this one, make it a little bit more interesting. I'll let you go first.
Yeah, I'll take the Vikings and the points. Absolutely. Or give the points, whatever it's called.
I'll
Yeah, 'cause I
take
think
the
are gonna
Vikings
kill
too.
them.
I think they're going to win 27-3. All right, that's going to do it for Meatsauce and Monty. Special thanks to Dan, the Common Man Cole, for coming in here.
I am not a crook.
We'll see you back here next week.